Hey everybody, Alex Newman here with the New American. So glad to have you tuning in. We have a returning guest, a very special guest. He is a friend of mine, a wonderful host of a wonderful show, an author. Actually, we had him on last time he released a book. He's got a new one, and when I saw the title, I said, "Oh my goodness, we have got to get him on." It's called "The Satanic Conspiracy: The Specter Haunting Mankind." Charles, give us the 50,000-foot view. What is the Satanic Conspiracy, and how is it haunting mankind?
Thank you, Alex. Thank you as always. The book starts out with a simple mathematical proof in the existence of the Lord God, King of the universe, the creator of the universe, the giver of the law. And I get into that in a very simple way, which is easy to understand and which makes it, as Thomas Jefferson would have said, self-evident. Then I talk about the satanic element. Why is it then that if we have a God that is good and a God that is love and a God that is perfect, why do we have evil in the world? Why do we have a satanic aspect that exists in all of us and that exists all around us? And, I point out ways to identify that satanic element that is with us. It is a part of our nature, and how to identify it in ourselves, how to identify it in our societies. And once we do that, because Satanism only exists in the shadows, Satan hides, is a disguise, it is a false idea. Once it is exposed, we can confront it and it can dissipate, and we can at least put it in its place. We'll never get rid of it. Only until the Messiah comes will it totally go away. But in this world of ours, in this secular world, we are dealing with satanic influence. And I note how that satanic influence has metastasized since the beginning of time, and how it manifests today, and how it's manifested in recent centuries in secrets, in the form of secret societies and secret goings on. I mean, I point out that we may be criticized for mentioning conspiracy, but yet obviously we understand that the mafia, organized crime syndicates, those are secret societies that are set up to commit crime. Likewise, you have political and social societies that are also secret and that are set up deliberately to subvert the nature of the universe, which is the satanic idea, to take that which is good, that which is consistent with and brings us closer to God, and to conspire to draw us away from that principle, and as such, to replace God with an earthly entity themselves. And I note in history that this goes back to what the Bible warns us about, the Torah warns us about, which is idol worship, which is the worship of the graven image, and how the graven image has been replaced by this sort of international cabal of oligarchs, which tends to crop up in all nations. And we have to counter that by shining a light on it, identifying it, and identifying that and showing the light of truth against the basic foundation of the satanic influence, which is falsehood, which is the lie, which is the attempt to overthrow that which is good and that which is real. And, it starts with recognizing that within each of us, and then understanding it when we see it in other people, and then in our societies, and how to set up societies in such a way that we have a running chance at countering it and at putting it in its place. We're never going to completely get rid of it, but we have to constantly work in every generation to expose it.
Yeah, that is so fascinating, Chuck. And I mean, you're Jewish, so I think you approach this from a little bit of a different perspective than Christians or Christian theology would look at it. But before we went on, you mentioned that this goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel, and and I know the Jews and the Christians share a lot of scriptures in common. The Christians call a lot of it the Old Testament, and Jews call it the Torah. But so walk us through that. What's been going on like from the beginning of human history? How has Satan and this satanic effort manifested itself in the affairs of mankind?
Well, first of all, I think that there's really very subtle differences between the Judaic and the Christian understanding of Satan, but yet they've cross-pollinated from the beginning because we all derive from the same Torah. And where Christians tend to emphasize somewhat of an anthropomorphic understanding of Satan, and they focus on the symbols of Satan. Judaism tends to look at it under the Hebrew principle of the Yetzer Hara, which is the evil intent, the evil idea, that it is, in a sense, that which happens in the vacuum of good. In other words, if you do not conduct goodness and you do not engage in mitzvah and the doing of good deeds, and in the case of Jews, we have an extra responsibility, then you're inviting by vacuum, by default, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. So it's our job as human beings, as is images of God, all of us, men and women, to identify not only the Yetzer Hara in ourselves, but when we see it and stand up to it. I mean, of course, the greatest example in world history of one man who stood up to the Yetzer Hara was Jesus, who stood up to the mighty Roman Empire in the person of Pontius Pilate when Pilate said, "Who do you answer to?" And he said, "I answer to a greater authority than you." Within hours of that, he was crucified. And that represents the individual created in the image of God, the conscious person who understands good and evil, who's able to understand large aspects of good and evil. We can't know everything, but we can know a lot. And identifies that and identifies the source of his sovereignty, his independence, which is the creator, not the state, not the great Roman Empire who comes in and says, we are the highest authority. And that in a sense, the satanic influence, the Yetzer Hara today, and has been in every generation, is this attempt by these cabals of oligarchs, whether they be setting up a false idol or whether they operate in the Council on Foreign Relations or whatever, to usurp that power of the creator, that greater authority that Jesus made reference to, and replace it with themselves as the greatest authority. And it is a dark side of human nature that does this. I point out that many of these people at the core are fully conscious of what they're doing, but because of their influence and because of their power, and that power is growing, they have essentially hypnotized masses of people who don't understand what's going on. They are unwitting, but they know that if they genuflect in the direction of this power, they're going to get rewarded. And if they stand up to this power and reject it, they might be crucified like Jesus was.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And we've only got a couple minutes left in this segment, but when we get to the other side of the break, I really want to talk about some of these secret societies that you mentioned, and also, how does a person deal with this? We recognize that there is all this evil in the world. What is the best way to deal with it? But before we go to break, Chuck, what is the best way for people to get a copy of the book? And I'll ask you again before we leave today. But what's the best way for people to get a copy of the book? And tell us just a little bit about what caused you to write this book.
Thank you, Alex. The book is the fifth part of a series. I'm writing these short books. I'm trying to do one a month, and this one is, in a sense, the bookend to my book about God. God is God. And right now I'm working on a book that I'm calling Blue Anon, which is an answer to all these left-wing conspiracy theories that took place under the Trump administration. So, I mean, most of my work is political, but these two particular books are more spiritual. And they're available at Amazon Books. Just look it up, Charles Moscowitz, The Satanic Conspiracy.
All right, very good. So Charles Moscowitz, guys, you can find him on Amazon, and we're going to go to a break in just a moment here. But when we get back, we're going to talk with Charles about these satanic societies that have been causing so much havoc in our world today, and also, more importantly, how do we resist this? What is the best thing for a person who wants what's good, who wants what's right, who wants what's true, to fight back against these evil forces and evil ideas that have caused so much misery and so much horror in our planet, not just today, but going back many, many decades, many centuries, even millennia, all the way back to the very beginning. So, guys, stay tuned right here. Don't touch that dial. This is Alex Newman with The New American Magazine. We'll be back in just a moment with more from Charles Moscowitz and his book, The Satanic Conspiracy. Hey everybody, Alex Newman here, back again with our good friend Charles Moscowitz, and he is a returning guest. He has his own show, which is phenomenal. We interviewed him some months ago about a book he wrote on the existence of God, which was just phenomenal. So we have him back today talking about his new book on the Satanic Conspiracy. And before we went to break, we talked a little bit about how this has manifested in ancient human history, going all the way back to the Tower of Babel. Now, in the last segment that we have here, I want to talk about how this is manifested today. These secret societies that Charles talked about. So, Charles, give us some insight into these secret societies. Are there names that you have of organizations? What kind of proof is there? I mean, are we just tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, or are there actual secret societies that are up to no good?
There are secret societies. This is we have to be very careful when we talk about them because they're secret and we can't know some of their inner workings, but we know a lot. I mean, there's a lot that is known. In Judaism, the secret society really began with the false messiahship of Shabtai Zvi in the 17th century, who perverted elements of Judaism. It's a horrible story of the devastation that he caused the Jewish covenant and the Jewish people. And it's one that I trace briefly in this book. I've gotten into it in more detail in other books, but it has everything to do with the problems that Judaism faces today, and that these ideas have kind of wormed their way in. This is a very powerful, secretive group that he founded, and that continues to hold the high ground in Jewish culture and even in the Jewish synagogue. And also in the Christian world, it is mimicked or mirrored by the foundation of the Illuminati in 1776, which was a conspiracy to undo not just Catholicism and Protestantism as well, but also all of the European monarchies and all secular and religious authority. Both of these movements are seeking to undo the moral and ethical code of Sinai and replace it with a world order that involves human control. And I trace that toward modern times. I mentioned several important figures involved in this movement, not particularly Darwin and Huxley, Julian Huxley, the founder of UNESCO, and other such figures. And bringing it up till today, I point out that this movement has become so vast and so international and so interlocking that with the combination of these forces and the technologies that are now available to the world because of discovery, technologies that on the face could be used for good, of course, but in their hands not necessarily, such as artificial intelligence and satellite control of people, mind control, and massive databases controlling people's every aspect of the human being, and the transhumanism movement and transgenderism, which is an offshoot of that. This idea of kind of controlling what is, blurring the lines of what is, and this is something I get into what Shabtai Zvi did and what Weishaupt did as well. That institutions that exist to empower us as individuals, the family, the personal relationship, the nation state as a protector of natural rights, the right to trade goods and services, the right to worship. These are things that they view as false consciousness that need to be undone. And I particularly get into how Julian Huxley developed this modern evolutionary humanism, which would replace all religions, but at the same time leave the religious trappings in place. So we think we have all of those things, but what we believe in has been replaced. And if you look at your own church, your synagogue, your mosque, you will see that these forces have replaced belief in a creator of the universe who is outside of human manipulation. And it has put in place something else, something that is amoral and something I would argue is satanic. And we need to start to understand that. I think the best way to get to that, besides study, besides becoming aware, and I know this might sound simple, but it comes down to the importance of prayer. You know, we have, if you take a moment every day and just listen to yourself and reflect on what you do know, you're going to develop a pattern and a habit of building clarity and building sobriety in terms of how you look at other events and other people in the world. And in the broader sense, you have to do the work that Alex, you do at the New American Magazine. You have to expose the nature of this conspiracy as a way to counter it, because if we don't expose it, they're going to just further march forward.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say all that, Chuck, and there really does seem to be this thread woven through, especially recent centuries, of just this fanaticism against all these institutions that God ordained, like the family, like civil government, like all these important moral principles that we shouldn't murder, that we shouldn't commit adultery. I mean, just all these things are just under relentless attack. So you mentioned prayer as one of the things that we can do in exposing this evil. But in the last 4 minutes or so that we have left, Chuck, you give us some insight into how does a normal person deal with this? What steps do we have? Can we resist this? And if so, what are some concrete strategies that individuals listening to this or watching this can take in their own lives, in their own sphere of influence, to try to push back on this?
Everybody can do something. You know, we all have our skills. Alex, you do radio and you do writing for the New American Magazine. I do my thing on YouTube. I write my pamphlets. Every person can do something to be active in the world and to, in a sense, take their part in exposing what they see as false and what they see as contrary to that which is good and that which is beneficial to building a moral civilization. And it does. I'm not suggesting for a second that it's easy to do. You know, it's extremely difficult, and you're going to find that you're going to have opposition where you may not have expected it. But it has to be done, because if we don't do it, we're going to descend into evil. It's just that simple. Freedom doesn't grow on trees. You have to nurture it. You have to go out and work for it, and every single person can do something to contribute to it. So.
Excellent. And so where do you think we're headed? I mean, is evil going to continue making more and more progress? Are our societies and our families just going to keep crumbling and breaking down? Or do you see some hope in the near term, at least, that people will kind of wake up and start pushing back?
Well, I mean, I personally see hope, but at the same time, we're at the same crossroads we're always at in every generation, except now it's more acute because of modern technology and modern communication, and the ability to control is something that's advanced. But I think that on the one hand, I think that the establishment, the illuminated oligarchy, this could be their last gasp. I mean, that's what I hope. But at the same time, this could be only the beginning of their advance into total power. And you know, we have to just understand the nature of what we're up against here, and expose it to the best way we can. And it's, again, it takes a lot of courage to do it, but I feel encouraged. I mean, I generally am optimistic. I mean, by nature. So, you know, you have to be. You have to, you know, have faith that the truth will prevail. Ultimately, it will prevail. The question is when.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point, Charles. And right now, I'm kind of on the seesaw too. You know, one day I see millions of people are waking up. This is wonderful. People are, getting
Mm.
involved, and then the next minute you look at the media and it's just like psychological warfare. It's over. Everything is doomed. We're gonna go into this one world system, and there's no way out. Submit now. Resistance is futile. Folks, resistance is not futile. Chuck, we've got less than a minute left now. Tell people again how to get your book. How do people go and watch your show or listen to your show? And you have a personal website as well where people can find more about you and all the many wonderful things that you're involved with. So go ahead and take the last 30 seconds or so. Do some shameless self promotion.
Thanks a lot, Alex. The main thing is Amazon Books. The book is available. All 5 of these pamphlets are available. at Amazon Books. Just look it up, Charles Moscowitz, The Satanic Conspiracy, and it'll come up. My personal website is charlesmoscowitz.com. I do a podcast Monday through Friday live, 12 noon to 1 p.m. usually. And that's on YouTube and about 30 other platforms. I'm on many platforms because some of these platforms are censoring me. So I figure if one goes, I'll be on the other ones. And I'll just keep moving it forward.
Excellent. Well, Charles, thank you so much for being with us, folks. That's Charles Moscowitz, author of The Satanic Conspiracy. I'm Alex Newman with The New American. Thanks for listening.